Namaskar, everybody. Good to
Namaskar.
see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Revisit self-inquiry and try and understand it. Though we have read about it, we have talked about it, we have read Bhagwan's Q&A from the talks, we have read Who Am I, we have read Updesaram, and yet we struggle with this clarity. How do I do it? How do I do it? And that was always the question devotees asked Bhagwan in the old hall again and again. I'm not clear yet. I'm not clear yet. And Bhagwan always said the same thing to most people, that all you need to do is stay with the self. Do not leave it. It is as simple as that. But for mortals like us, it's not easy to stay with the self. Why? Because the objects around me, the world around me, besieges me and holds me, and I consider this body to be me. And because I consider this body to be me, I consider everything linked to this body as my world. And things that I consider my world, like I'm going, I'm coming, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, it's my definitions, my time, my success, my failure, me, my objects, physical movements, things planned and not accomplished, thing accomplished which were not properly planned and I take credit for. Credit, discredit, jealousy, anger, all this is me. A colossal warehouse, for a lack of better word. I was looking for a much bigger word than a warehouse, of permutation combinations, a mega database, a supercomputer of things is in my mind, which defines my limited I. So in order to go back into and clarifying to ourselves as to how do I do self-inquiry, we must understand the basics that first of all, this I, that I consider to be me, is the problem. This I, this ego, we should always connote, we should always denote, we should always signify with a small I. And the self, the reality, the consciousness, the awareness, Brahman, Jannat, Swarga, that should be denoted by, written as, visualized as the uppercase I, the capital I, just for the sake of clarity to our minds, because we are not clear otherwise. We should always practice to say I as me and I as the self. Because with the I, which is always present in my wakeful state, continues to be attached to me, and I continue to function with these attachments only. I have no other world other than the world that is connected with my small I. So for the sake of our discussions, we will always call it a small I and a large I or big I or capital I. Let's be clear about that. So my world at any given time, just think about it. And we all know it, not that Bandhu is saying something which no one knows. No, we all know it. But this is the way to practice it constantly, every day, while driving, while walking, while talking, while cooking, while bathing, while doing all our functions. The small I is constantly attached to me throughout my wakeful state. No denying that fact. I wake up, and I attached my eye. I got to brush my teeth. I got to do this. I got to go there. My agenda, my calendar, this and that. The eye continues. And this same eye, this small eye, which continues attached to me, inseparable during my wakeful state, also continues during my dream state. So I have first two things, small I, uppercase I. Let's be clear about it. Small I is the ego, upper I is the self. And the paradoxical thing, which we'll talk about a little later, hopefully, is that the small I, the egotistical I, is part of the capital I, the reality, the self, or the heart. So for our discussions, again, as Ramana devotees, we will refer to heart and as the self, self as the heart. And if somebody wants clarity, we'll say, yes, the same. It's the same awareness, consciousness, it's heaven, whatever name one has. That's the reality. That reality is the self, which is also called the heart, because we know the scriptures and sages like Ramana and many other sages have also defined it to be residing in our own heart. That's why it's within me, but not physically within me. Within me, from birth to birth, this jiva is not shaped and formed in the shape of a body for the first time. It has been part and parcel of this process of development, this process of production. Like, things are being produced, bodies. So I'm part of that. So during my dream state, the same small I continues. The only difference is that in the wakeful state, I consider it to be real. It appears to be as if it's real. In the dream, I say I had a dream like this. And in the dream, the images are slightly different. But they are all from my existence of various existences prior to this. It is not from anywhere else. The only time my small I separates or merges with the uppercase I, the capital I, is only when I'm in deep sleep state, when I'm not dreaming and I am in that state of bliss because I've merged with the I. It happens every 24 hours for normal human beings when we are in deep sleep. When you're not dreaming, there's no rapid eye movement. And we all call that the relaxing time. That's what we remember when we say, I had very good sleep. And some of us, unfortunate ones, don't sleep well at all. Their mind is so active that they don't sleep well at all. And again, a caveat here, that many of the sages also don't sleep much. So don't sleep well when you're not very advanced. You don't sleep well when you're very advanced also. Because when you're advanced enough, you don't need to be sleeping much. You are happier anyway. You are less turbulent. Your mind is less turbulent anyway, and therefore you don't need that much rest. So this is the way to begin to recognize it, to hold on to it, because Bhagavan has said, why don't you hold on to the self? And that's a big dilemma, a big paradox. How do I hold on to it? I hold on to it by recognizing that I'm always in the small I. When that begins to become a reality, and it will only become a reality in fractions of millions of seconds. But if that happens, and if we are earnest devotees, and if we are becoming more than a bhakta, if you're becoming a mumuksha, then we'll never forget that moment. That moment you will not leave you. It cannot, because that was the moment of being inseparable from myself. So the small I, during the wakeful state, the ego continues to recognize my life as real life, my objects as real, though they're not, because the body, the jiva, wasn't here before it was born as bandhu. it won't be here after it stops existing as so and so at such and such place. All those definitions will go, and therefore this jiva does not. Now again, another just going off a little bit, but not off the tangent, off on a tangent. Just a slight side understanding. When I go away from that understanding, that is because I was never born. I'm unborn. I'm undying. Asangoham, 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 punapuna. Shankaracharya. I was never born. I can never be dead. Therefore, I have no birth. I have no. That's why Ramana Maharshi has answered questions when people said about reincarnation, about death. He has said, yes, you definitely have incarnation because your prarabdha is shaping the events of your life in this particular life. At the same time, he said, you were never born. No, there's no prarabdha because you were never born. So this is the clarity we should have, that while I know that I am a limited self, I also know that I am not a limited self. The only thing is of my permanence. My permanence is not there with the ultimate reality. My impermanence has become the reality for me. I hope this is making sense. How do I separate myself? By constantly reminding myself, I cannot be this limited self. I must drop it. How do I drop it? By dropping my definitions, dropping my attributes, dropping my agendas. Becoming a loser in the spiritual sense is a very good place to be at. I don't have to carry the load with me of my life, just as Bhagavan told us again and again. Do you carry your luggage on your head when you're traveling by train or a plane? So why don't you offload the burdens of your life to the uppercase I and leave the small I from struggling and working very hard and doing this and that and accomplishing this and that and patting myself on the back all the time and being depressed? If I'm not spiritual, I'm very quickly depressed. When things don't go right, I'm depressed. And I snap at others and I tell them I'm not in a good mood. I don't want to talk to anybody. I can't talk to anybody. We've heard those expressions from people that we have known. Oh, I can't talk to anybody today. I just couldn't talk to anybody. Why? Because they're very weak. They're not truly spiritual. They may think they are, but they're not. Whenever, if one were to meet in the spiritual circle of friends, anybody who says, I've been depressed, you have to know that that person is still not mature enough. Otherwise, how could you be depressed? There's no scope for depression anywhere because everything is just a fake world anyway. And especially when things don't go right. And if I'm spiritual, that's the time when it is going right, so that I focus more on the uppercase I. The self-inquiry can be enhanced, can be accentuated, can be intensified only when I have some setback. And this is another cardinal principle of knowing whether I'm walking towards my self-inquiry. Because when difficulties are thrown at me, they're only thrown at me so that I remember not to take my personal, egotistical, small I life as real life. It does not happen otherwise. You can meet swamis, hundreds of swamis, and maybe one out of thousands of swamis that you may have gone to a spiritual lecture of, or you may know because they have been in your circle somewhere. And many people bow and prostrate right away because they see an ochre robe. Nothing wrong with it. I'm not condemning that. I'm just saying, Bandhu is just saying that does not necessarily mean that they are staying with the uppercase I, that they are reposed with the self every day, every moment. No, they're also leading a sansaric life in their own ashram. Every ashram is a sansara. Just as my life is a sansar, my family is my sansar, similarly, ashram is only an extension of my family. Therefore, people like Neep Karori Baba never used to stay at a place for long periods of time. He would just vanish overnight. People would say, oh, Guruji's gone. His last place was Kanchidham in Uttarakhand now, I think, in the Almora district or somewhere there. But I've been there. I don't remember exactly where it is, but it's now Uttarakhand, I think, Kanchidham. So, Jitji, is that Uttarakhand? Kanchidham? Okay, so what the point we're making is very simple, and we all know this. And these satsangs are lovely for us so that we remind each other. No teacher here, no student here, we all devotees, that this is the only way. There's no other way. When we asked a question to Bhagavan, where is it? In Who Am I? You all remember this. How will the mind become quiescent? How do I stop this cacophony of sounds in my mind? How do I control this train, this chain going on and on and on and on and on? How will the mind become quiescent? Bhagavan, by the inquiry, who am I? The thought, who am I, will destroy all of the thoughts. And like the stick used for stirring the burning pyre, it will itself in the end get destroyed. Then there will arise self-realization. So the self-inquiry is always attacking our own small ego. That's the only way. And there's another question, who am I, where the devotee asks, will there not be realization of the self? This is question number 5 for those who may want to know about it. Will there not be realization of the self even while the world is there, taken as real? Can I not realize the self if I continue to take the world as real? And Bhagavan's answer is very brief, terse, pithy. There will not be. That's all. As long as we consider this, and now, another caveat here. So, and this has been asked of Bhagavan many times. So what will happen to my world? Supposing I'm mature enough, I'm ripened enough, I've become paripakwa, that okay, I'm closer to self-realization. Bhagavan, will my world be removed? Nay, it will not be removed. Oh, so what will happen? It will continue exactly the way you are continuing, except that you will not be attached to it. Why will it continue? Because that's your prarabdha. My prarabdha, but I'm beyond prarabdha. No, but that's the prarabdha of the body. The body is going through the events, your fractures, your illnesses, your good health, your success, everything that happens with this body, even in physical form, is your prarabdha. Your friends is your prarabdha, your family is your prarabdha, your parents is your prarabdha, your kith and kin is your prarabdha. And the closer and the vasana, the bandhan, my deepest bandhan is the ones that give me the most trouble. My most intense trouble comes from those with whom I have been very, very deeply attached in my previous existences. And it's not linear. It's not linear that on previous life I did this. That's why it's happening this time now. There's no time factor there. It could have happened in some place somewhere. It could be anywhere. And that's the intensity. That's why children, offsprings, are your biggest, you are their biggest debtor. They are your biggest creditors. You owe them the most. Just as your parents owed us the most. That's why you start by looking after your offsprings from the time they're born. And most of the times, it's not a happy relationship in 5 out of 10 families with their offsprings, with their parents. So this is one way of looking at it. Now, let's look at, continuing with it, unless somebody wants to interject. How do I recognize that I am merged with the self? Bhagavan has said so many times, you are part of that bigger I, the capital I. Bandhu is calling it capital I. Bhagavan never said that. Bhagavan just said self and ego. And unfortunately, and here this is Bandhu's ego being critical of Ramanashramam publications, never, ever, till date, thousands of copies have been published. They have never printed the egotistical I and small I as small I, not lowercase I, and the ego as capital I. No, it just goes on as if everybody understands. And there are more people, again, critical, Bandhu's problem, Bandhu's ego, that many devotees that have not, they walk around in Tiruvannamalai or Ramanashram because they think, oh, we live in the ashram, we are self-realized. Mistake not, that's not true. Unless you've gone through what an iron rod goes through, you cannot begin to walk on this path. This path is not for everybody. Iron rod, I deliberately brought it in. We all have seen an red hot iron rod taken out of a furnace of an ingot factory or a steel factory. I don't know how many of you have actually physically seen it, but you can easily visualize it. A red hot iron rod, a rectangular iron rod has been taken out of a furnace at a factory and then is put on a steel plate, and the labor, now the things have changed and now there's an electrical hammer that comes down, but you beat it up. You beat it up and you shape it in whichever shape you want it, right? Are you all with me? Now, here is a good one that we can practice to watch my ego. So the red hot iron with its red glow, which is being beaten, is the small I. It is being molded and shaped in different directions. That's the egotistical I. The glow, if you have seen a red hot iron having taken out of a furnace at 500 degrees Celsius or 1,000 degrees, there is a glow around it. A red hot glow is around it. Are you visualizing it? So when you beat it, the glow doesn't change. The rod changes. The glow remains the same. And the glow remains the same because glow is the self. It's always resplendent, always present, always unchanging, always undiminishing, cannot be withered, cannot be chiseled, cannot be shaped into anything else. It is. And when do we merge with it? When the red hot iron is absolutely cold, there is no glow. I hope this example is making sense. Bandhu is sharing something very personal with you of practice. I am the red hot iron. I'm angry. I am the burning thing. I've just been. And when does the beating start? Now, again, very personal thing. The beating starts when I burn in that furnace. I'm being almost exhumed by that furnace. Those are the difficulties. When that happens, those are the beatings. You are now ripe enough to be beaten into some better shape, and then I merge. So difficulties, embrace them. Ill fame, embrace it, and don't ever separate yourself from because of a rumor you heard about somebody. Rather go closer to them. Those are not realities. Bhagavan has said, I took out that I did read today. So here's a very powerful sentence Bhagavan used. He's talking about how then can one remain indifferent to the teachings if I cannot separate myself? Can the body, which is insentient as a piece of wood, shine and function as I, the self? No. Therefore, lay aside this insentient body as though it were truly a corpse. That's a powerful statement there. Consider this living body to be a corpse. Not in a negative way. I mean, if we are already mature about this kind of practice, it's very easy to imagine myself as a corpse. I wasn't born until I was born, and then I did not know myself as how I know myself now until I was born. And I will not know myself as myself when I'm dead. So what is the real meaning of this existence? The real meaning of this existence is nothing but a living corpse. And these are Bhagwan's words. Also, the veil of ignorance can never completely hide the self. So, veil of ignorance is as long as I'm ignorant, there's some parda on me. Some ignorance is there. I cannot hide the self. What does that mean? That's a very powerful statement. You don't have to hide the self. Self is always looking at you. But it is separate from me because I have the ignorance that I'm not the self. So I hope it is culminating. I hope it's coming closer. I hope I'm making sense if you're staying with me. And there is no other way other than this inquiry for self-inquiry. As the group had asked, can we compare it to other methods? There's no other method. Because if you look at the Upanishads, or if you look at the old Greek mythology, or you look at what Lao Tse spoke in Tao, or you look at what other saints and sages have talked about, they all have come close to saying, I am that I am, or find out your real self, etc., 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 and so many Mahavakyas in different religions. But nobody has spent as much time in describing, elaborating, talking to the common man every day. By common man, I mean ignorant people like us. We are all common men because we are not realized. Talking to them every day for 54 years of his life and just telling them the same thing. Just realize yourself. And we don't do that. So it's very good because the ego, there's one more note here, because the ego in the form of the I thought, small I thought, is the root of the tree of illusion. Illusion, Maya, unreal things, true of illusion. Its destruction fells illusion. If I destroy it, illusion goes away. Fells, felling of the tree, fells illusion. Even as a tree is felled by the cutting of its roots. So the only way to realize the self-inquiry, by the way, that's the only way. And by the way, self-inquiry, I think there was an expression used in the conversations that were going on in Nepal. Self-inquiry theory. No theory. There's no principle. There is no scientific way of proving. There's no epistemological way of saying this is how we define it. So when we say, are there any ways of self-inquiry? We cannot say, are there any ways of self-inquiry theory? Because the moment you add theory or a principle, or then it becomes two. Then it's separating it. So self-inquiry is just self-inquiry. And you can argue. If we were intellectual, you will say, but then I'm saying self-inquiry. So who's inquiring? Oh, I'm inquiring. The limited I is inquiring. And I've heard those people in my so many satsangs that we did in the United States. I've heard the intellectual people saying, okay, but then there are two thoughts. So one thought, oh, come on. You have millions of thoughts. What are you talking about, one or two? So now this whole thing that we're talking about also has a colossal prerequisite. And we talked a little bit about it last satsang. And that prerequisite is that I have to be pure in my limited way, in my functions, in my world, with my egotistical eye. I got to be a very, very clean human being. My dealings are to be clean, and I have to live for others. There's a very good quote that the Nepal Satsang group sent. I think, Naranji, I can thank you for that. I think it was in Hindi or something, but it's very, very, very powerful. That when you toil, when you struggle to make your life better, you are not actually making it better. But when you begin to toil for others, you are making your life better. Something like that. And that's very profound. And that's the true way of looking at life. I must do something for someone or the other every day, which cuts into my time, my agenda, my money, where I feel that, oh, what will I do then? No, that's the time to separate yourself. Give it. Go away from it. That's walking away from my small I. Tall order, very tall order. Doesn't happen very easily. And that will happen when the beatings come. And beatings will come when I'm pure. So it's which way? I must be pure to get those kinds of things. Okay, here it is, what I was just referring to. It was sent in Hindi. Thank you, Naranji. And let me try and translate that. Let me first say it in Hindi. अपने सुख के लिए उद्योग करना दुख को निमंत्रण देना है और दूसरों के सुख के लिए उद्योग करना आनंद को निमंत्रण देना है. अपने सुख के लिए उद्योग करना दुख को निमंत्रण देना है और दूसरों के सुख के लिए उद्योग करना आनंद को निमंत्रण करना है. So, toiling only for my own pleasures is creating sorrow for myself. But toiling for others is paving the way of my own happiness. That's the translation. That if I just keep on working for myself and as if I'm going to gain happiness, nay, no, it's going to create sorrow. But if I toil to give happiness to others, that will pave the way to my own happiness. Arunachala, Jai Arunachala.
Om Arunachala, Jai Arunachala. Thank you, Pandiji.
I'm very happy.